HR Success Talk has started its journey in 2012 with a vision to bring HR and business leaders together in a form of a community to share knowledge and learn from each other. Starting from a single blog, we reached our first initiative called Forum to give a bigger platform to HR professionals to collaborate with each other. Later, we realized that we need to connect our members in person along with online. Hence, we launched our vertical called HR Sting Meets, under which we organize HR conferences and meetups where we invite HR and business leaders to talk about best practices in HR and business in different industries. HR Sting Meets also became a platform for our members to network with each other. We continued and also launched our online assessment vertical, which helps professionals at different levels in their career to learn and get a certificate in a specified field in HR. These assessments and certifications help HR professionals to find jobs or advancement in their career. HR Success Talk has leveraged technology while building the community. Our YouTube channel is focused on providing online videos or diverse different topics for benefits of our members. We can find video study material on topics like talent acquisition, HR generalist, HR analytics, learning and development, labor laws, and many more. During pandemic, we launched our webinar vertical. Again, with the use of the technology, we continued our mission of sharing and learning from each other. We touched thousands of lives across the globe and shared knowledge which was meaningful for our members. In HR Success Talk, we believe in recognizing and appreciating the contribution of HR and business leaders in their field, which is equally important. Hence, we launched our award vertical to provide a platform to professionals to give an opportunity to showcase their contribution and get recognized for it. We believe in fairness and capability. Hence, our jury and selection process is built in such a way that it provides opportunity to those who really deserve it. HR Success Talk has a very good presence on multiple social media platforms and other communication channels like Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, WhatsApp, and Twitter. You can also visit our website www.hrsuccesstalk.com to read some interesting blog by our HR bloggers on trending topics and issues. We are a huge community with global presence in multiple countries and thousands members and growing every month. We provide a platform to our members where they can learn from each other, can share their knowledge, and knowledge for others' benefit, build relationships and networking, and leverage this networking in any way they feel like. We have so many stories where our volunteers have leveraged this platform to find jobs, get new business opportunities, find a mentor to guide. It is up to them how they wish to leverage and use our platform. And guess what? You don't have to pay a fees to be a member or fill any form. You can be a member by click of a button by liking our Facebook, LinkedIn page or any other social media channel. Simple, isn't it? You must be wondering how we manage all this. Yes, you guessed it right. We have a force of highly talented volunteers who spend 3 to 5 hours every week of their time for this community. We also invest highly on the development of our volunteers and our HR team organize exclusive training sessions for them. Some of them have started as volunteers and today they are playing the leadership role in this community. If you also have the zeal and passion to serve the HR community and time to contribute, you can send your resume at info@hrsuccesstalk.com to be our volunteer. Our talent team will be in touch with you. For us, this is just a beginning. You can either choose to be part of the journey or watch it from a distance. Let's learn and share together.
Good evening, and thank you for joining Edge Talk series. Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's session. Edge Talk, a fireside chat with the eminent speakers to gain exciting and enriching insights on the trending topic and learn from their experiences. We say experiential learning. We are live globally on HR Success Talk social media pages, Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, Instagram, and also on our media partner channels, Benefigo and Aapki Khabar. Today, we have a professional with 15 plus years of rich experience across Fortune 500 companies. She has worked for organizations in financial technologies, US based IT services, telecom, and creative sectors. Her areas of expertise include strategic business partnership, organizational development, leadership development, talent management, performance management, and compliance and employee engagement. She has also worked extensively with teams across US, Europe, APAC, and India. She has also been recognized as the HR Leader Award by People Matters Are You in the List in year 2016, HR 40 Under 40 Award by Business World in year 2020, also as the Most Innovative Leader Award by World HRD Congress 2021. She is currently serving as the HR Director at Pfizer. So let's welcome Megha and thank you, Megha, for joining us for the show. We would like to hear from you about your journey in HR in the new normal.
Thank you, Nimisha. And, absolutely my honor and privilege to, be here on this platform today to share my experience and my knowledge. So, first of all, thank you so much, Nimisha and Govind, for having me here. Absolutely, the pleasure is all mine. Uh, Quickly, I think, if I have to sum up my journey of 15 years, I would just say, something that I started my career, prior to my MBA. There was nothing like, today's HR, which is your COEs and your HR partners and, different verticals of HR. It was literally everything on earth that you would want to HR to do, right from personal management to HRMS to, HR generalist kind of a role. I think only NNOD at that point of time was a specialized vertical that you would hire. To today, HR is very, very focused towards, providing value to the business rather than, doing the fun and the engagement activities, but really, focusing on how can you gain the maximum for the organization when it comes to the strategic partnership that you can do for the business. And that's the value that I see today HR brings in. And I personally feel that, 15 years from now, it's going to be very different than, what HR is today. So I think a lot of change that HR will themselves go through it, and people who will, would wanting to be learning throughout this journey, managing this change for themselves. Obviously, you can only do change management for the organization when you as an HR are ready for it. So I think that's what HR has to be ready for in the upcoming 15 years, I would say, Nimisha.
Thank you, Megha. And indeed, yes, HR has definitely gone through a lot of change. And when we talk about HR and with the new norm, definitely that brings to the topic of performance management. And we know it is a key business process, that ensures the well coordinated individual and also the team efforts conjoin into the organizational goals. And for many organizations, the managing performance, what we call it as 100% virtual context, it itself is a new territory altogether, right? Because it's not a matter of how the supervisor or the manager or the leader manage performance, but it is also thinking from the point of the employees, as in what kind of support do they need to perform well. And as HR, we know that though HR is responsible for managing performance or ensuring timely feedback, but it is also a business process, because it is the core of the success and the business continuity of the organization, that aligns the individual goals are aligned with the organizational goals. And today's new way of working really demands an improved performance management system. And that's why organizations are considering to revisit their performance management systems on how they could recalibrate on how they manage or motivate or reward performances in the new remote work context. And I was reading, a recent Gartner study had stated that 81% of the HR leaders are exploring the new ways to alter their existing performance management systems. And the annual reviews of what we have heard about, I think those things have become up kind of past, because a system which was championed by our GE CEO Jack Welch no longer serves the purpose in the new world, because 70% of the employees or the companies, 70% of the company says that they need to improve between the link between the performance management system and also on the other talent decisions. And especially with this currently work from home dynamics, has also further highlighted the shortcomings of the traditional performance management system, because nearly 41% of the remote workers have reported a high stress level compared to the 25% of regular office employees, according to the United Nations report. So the performance management systems are not geared to calculate the impact of the emotional exhaustion or the burnout of the productivity. And that brings me to the question to Megha, where I would like to ask you, how do you see performance management system evolving before and after COVID?
So, before we even talk about the before and after of, the performance appraisal, I would like to first get into, how old is our system from a performance management standpoint? And you would be, surprised to hear, it's as old as, 1800, century, when actually the performance management was introduced, to really think about how you can maximize, the production, the overall, manufacturing efficiency, to even measure that, how much an individual really helps in manufacturing and producing. And from there, the evolution of the performance appraisal really started gaining adoption, somewhere close to 1920s. And from there, there was a lot of questions around, is it fair? Is it biased? How do you get more objective performance appraisal? And that's where the coin or the term, which is management by objective, which we have heard, that's became popularized, which was somewhere close to the era of 1960s. And after that, all your psychometrics, your rating scale, your bell curve, and that's was all of those were introduced during that era, to bring in and thinking about how can we become more fairness, how can we start assessing not just the performance, but the psychometric of what goes behind, how the human feels. And then that also started have its own pitfall, and that's where the multi-rated feedback system came in, to bring in more objective around how can we get a 360-degree feedback, so that it's not dependent only the supervisor. How can we bring in feedback from the clients, your team members, your people who are down below you, to get a holistic point of view around the fact. And when we shifted towards the 2020s, I think the new era is about, okay, performance is something, if you just think and step back about a performance management, right? We talk about performance management for the year that has gone by. which means what you're doing is a post-mortem of what you have already done, which means it's done. You can't change it. Now, how can you think and move past that to say, hey, you are doing a performance or you are into something. How can you think beyond as feed, and I say feed forward, to say it's no more a feedback of a performance. It's more about a feed forward of a performance to say, hey, this is what you're doing on a project, but if you think about in a different direction, can you be doing ABC a lot better, which is not just the negative impact of something that's gone and you're doing a postmortem, but rather thinking more futuristic from a performance standpoint to really enable the individual to start thinking a lot more from a engagement standpoint to say, hey, the organization is invested in me, and therefore they're not doing a postmortem, but rather saying that I can be a lot better and by doing an XYZ. And second is, of course, being real time. See, let's be real, with all the stress that's going on in the system, all that remote working, nobody wants to hear after working 12 hours or 14 hours to say that, oh, you did not do well. What they really want to hear is, hey, you've been working 12 hours a day. How can I help you improve your day to be more efficient so that it's, you get a better work-life balance and we get more productive? I think that's the shift that we have to get into a performance management. And I think the first shift in the pandemic to, remote working, I would say, is the overall shift of moving from a historical context to a more futuristic context for people.
That's great. Thank you, Megha. And you rightly pointed towards, about the history, what we have taken us to in the performance management system. And also you pointed out a very good one about not the feedback, but about the feed forward. And especially with the virtual way, what we are moving towards. That brings me to the second question, what I would like to ask, how can performance management be reinvented, I would say, to cater to the new normal with our virtual remote employees?
So, Nimisha, interestingly, and, in my, I think how many years ago, 6 years, 7 years, somewhere during that time, I was very lucky to be part of one of the organization where globally I was part of this team to reinvent the performance management. And that was one of the time where none of the industry had moved away from bell curve. There was still an era of everybody following a bell curve and, everything that you see even today from a performance management standpoint. Now, if I put myself 7 years down the line, and I have to think about, what really would work for an employee in an organization, I think I would say three things, Nimisha. And I like to, call out three things because for memory of the audiences, when you put it into bullet points, it's a lot easier to remember. So I think the first thing in the performance management, and I always say, is a real-time feedback. You cannot go after a year and give a feedback to an individual because there's always a halo effect, Nimisha. If you ask me also what I've done at the start of the year, I won't remember. That's a reality. We all are human beings. No matter how big it was, no matter how much impact it gave to the organization, whether it was a dollar value or a big project or a big client, there is always a recency effect. So have that recency effect for an associate every single month or every 15 days. I think that's how frequent a performance conversation should be between a manager and the individual, so that it's real time, so that it's more positive, and the individual always know where I stand. They don't have to wait for a year for knowing how they're doing from a performance standpoint. So that's my first biggest factor, Nimisha, if I have to think about a performance conversation. The second piece, in my mind, from a performance standpoint, is disassociating, what we call as an HR, the systems, right? We always depend on these big, huge systems that will document all the performance history. And, you are expected to pull in those lengthy forms, and the associate fills in, and the manager fills in, and the supervisor fills in. And then basis that you do rating and ranking, and then basis that there is an outcome. I think, it worked wonderfully well when there was a question about biasness, fairness, how we're doing. But if you just disassociate yourself even as an HR to say, what does those rating rankings does? What does those big lengthy form does. It's nothing but documenting something, right? But think about it, if you distribute the fund in the organization, you ideally do this rating and ranking because 60% of the population at the end of the day get an average fund, and then 20% gets above average fund, and then remaining 20% get nothing or maybe a lesser fund. Imagine if you just take away rating and ranking, you still can distribute those 65% funds by saying these are average people, who are your average people. Then you can distribute a 20% fund to higher, because anyways manager are anyways doing it. And so happens for the bottom performers. Now skip all that operational aspect of rating a person, because what you're rating, when you rate a person, psychologically you're anyways putting a person into a box, which I don't feel that's the way it works, right? Nobody is like meets expectation or a rank 3 or a rank 4. It's about how I have done as an individual, and I don't need to be relatively compared with the other people. I think we have to, as an HR professional, think out of the box and think about what are we really solving for. We're solving for productivity to go up. We're solving for engagement to go up. We're solving for, we have a limited fund. How do we get that distributed? So let's for the real challenge, rather than, still going in the traditional way of having those large systems, having to rate and rank people, having to put people on the box, and then have that another disengagement of saying, oh, I never felt I'm a rank 3. Oh, I never felt I'm a rank 4. So get that piece out and have that real feedback and the real piece of what people can do. I think that about what you're solving as a performance management, rather than taking that legacy piece that you always have from a performance standpoint. So that's my second piece that I would say, if I have to reinvent an entire piece. The third piece that I personally feel that every individual and, as an organization, we have to start doing is to really understand that, as a performance philosophy, everything that you do, how do you enable that culture in the organization to think about, oh, something didn't go well in my performance in as an organization. How do you move past that and say, hey, this person did not do well in a project? Now, how do as an organization help and support to create that enable? Maybe the person was in the wrong role. Maybe the person, the role, that point of time didn't require that much of complexity, or the individual, or whatever you need for an individual to grow beyond that. I think you have to get out of the fact that the individuals are bad. It's about the organization able to take the potential of an individual. When you have taken 7 interviews or XYZ interview process, you've already filtered out a number of potential talent to say, hey, this potential of talent fits me. Now, it's not about going back to the individual and saying, hey, you are not good. It's about how the organization is able to tap that potential, and how do you create that kind of a culture to tap the potential. And if the person is not done well, it's not about the talent being bad. It's about thinking that what role fitment will work best for the individual. And I think that's the third piece of performance aspect that I would want to bring in, which is really focusing on, how do you tap the potential by not having all these factors of saying bad rating, bad performance, but really thinking about if something is not going well for the individual, it's not about the individual. It's as an organization that you have to start to figure out what can help this individual and the organization as a whole.
That's very great, Megha. And I really liked about what you mentioned about skipping the operational part, and basically because the real challenge what we are trying to solve is enhancing the productivity or creating the engagement, right? So that's what I wanted to understand on just the new performance management philosophy, what we are all talking about. Is it all about measuring the output in the new normal? What are your thoughts on this?
See, I always believed, I'll be very honest, right? I still remember my early days of my career. The time was tracked when you came to office. And I think we all have gone through it, right? You would have the swipe in, swipe out, these had the 9 hours, and then the biometrics came in. And, I even remember in one of the organization, the time was tracked only when you switch on the LAN used to connect to the laptop, and the laptop will boot, and then it will have an application. Only when the application starts working is when your time used to start tracking. And even I think 30 seconds before, if you log out and you put out the LAN cable, the time will stop. I still remember those era. To now, I don't know how many years. I don't remember there's a login time, logout time in the organization. It all matters is what you're working on, how much productive you are. And even now it's more about what's the outcome or impact that I've created to organization. I think it's already moved into an era into a lot of organization where they don't care about what time in that you come in, what time out you go out. They don't nowadays even care about the fact what you're doing. What they really care about in that particular period or a project, what was your contribution, what impact that you created to the business, what impact did it brought to your clients, what's the feedback that the client has to talk about you, was it strategic enough or was it just an operational piece that you were supporting. I think there is a lot of shift already happening, but I still feel it's in pockets. I still feel it depends a lot around which industry that you operate in, rather than really thinking about, oh, it's a broad brush that people have completely moved on to. I think it's still in pockets. Then obviously a lot of organizations are still talking about and struggling to move towards, really moving to less time based and more outcome slash impact based.
Yeah, I think on true, as you mentioned about it depends upon the industry, right? Because there could be certain industry like manufacturing where they have a particular time, log wherein they need to complete certain amount of quantity or in the particular time period. So what do you think are the drivers of effective performance appraisal in the current context?
So I think the biggest, uh, I would say, a biggest enabler of any performance management, Nimisha, is I think I'm a big fan of crowdsourcing ideas from people. I think, the more larger setup that you are in, hear what your people want. And I never say that, just because I have experienced something that was, going away from Belka is something that every organization can. You cannot, because every organization culture is different. Every organization people are different. And you cannot broad brushly apply that, oh, every organization should just go away from Belka. It completely depends on the culture of the organization. So listen to what your people are saying, listen to what your organization culture is, and basis that, twist and tweak the entire thing that suits your people. I think you would be, if you are in HR and you go and apply a bell curve less model in a manufacturing, maybe it would be the complete failure of all kinds that you can do really. But if you are into a Google's and the Microsoft of the organization where it's very very clear about the outcome and the impact, and if you go there and start relatively comparing to people on the same job, you will again be a big failure as an HR. So think about where you are as an organization. Think about what your people want. Ask people that what kind of a performance management do you really feel will work out, and then you really crowdsource that and create something that works for your people, rather than just reading two articles, hearing two talks won't help you. Think about what's your DNA of the organization. Talk to your people through multiple platforms, focus group conversations, and then apply that model that works for your organization. I think that's my biggest piece of advice if organizations are thinking about reinventing the cycle. The second piece, yearly does not work for no matter which organization, no matter which industry you are. Yearly does not work. Nobody wants to go back in time to say, hey, that is one time in the month of January and I'm sitting in the month of December in this particular project you said something which didn't work for the client. I mean, like, give that feedback right after when the client was not happy. Like, why are you saying that in December? I had like 11 months to improve myself, but you are telling me in the month of December to say, oh, I should have said something else to the client. That means last 11 months I'm doing the same behavior. Behavior doesn't change in a day. Behavior has to be repetitively told for behaviors to be changed, and hence you have to give a real-time feedback. Yearly performance would not work for any of the organization. I think the second piece that organizations should move is the yearly appraisal. And third piece, I again and again say, move out of those lengthy tools. Think about, we are right now in a generation of WhatsApp. We've even stopped messaging and texting, right? Why WhatsApp? Because we just want to say hi and send. And then we think, and then we send a line, and then we send a word, and we just send a smiley. I think that's the generation that we're dealing with. And which means if you still expect people to go to a tool and fill the lengthy 2000 words, doesn't work, guys. We all have to think about how can you make it easy? How can you make it effective? If it is an email, chain that people want to follow on the performance. Let them do that till the time they're able to upload that document on our site. Works, because all HR wants is at least some documentation, so that tomorrow if the person moves from one role to another role, there is some documentation of performance. It's not lost. If there is a grievance that happens, you have some documentation to prove the performance was good or bad. That's all HR wants. So, think creative. Can an email be just uploaded on performance over a internal portal or your profile, like you have a LinkedIn, right? You have that attachment that I can go and attach this talk. Why can't we do a performance appraisal talk attachment on the intranet portal for that year? I think that's a creative idea that HR has to bring into, because that's the generation that we're dealing with. All tools does not work. It has to be easy, it has to be efficient, it has to be fast.
Great, Megha. I really, so you talked about the three drivers that we all should move on from: moving to crowdsourcing, moving from the yearly feedback to real-time feedback, more and more frequent conversation with your team, with your managers. And that would, the more you have, it would definitely help you, or you can definitely no need to have those lengthy tools or the HRAS where you have to just add on all the conversation, all the documents. Rather, we can have we have Google Drive, we have Microsoft Intranet, all these uploads where we can create it, and particular business or the team can definitely upload it. That was a fantastic, I think all the audience would be very insightful to hear about the conversation. Moving on to, would like to understand what's your opinion of implementing OKR in the organization, objective key results.
So, see, I think it's great, because the more objectivity that you bring into any conversation is always great, right? Nimisha, do I want to hear about, oh, you are great. Oh, I think I love every piece that you do. So now I really am confused in that conversation. Should I be doing something differently? Should I be, what I was great at? I really don't know, right? So, a lot of time you will hear managers using that kind of a word into the performance conversation. Oh, you're doing fantastic. You're great. I don't think so. You need to worry about anything. So why don't we talk about different things? I think that's where the conversation have to go back and think about, what's an OKR framework is nothing to bring more objectivity to things, which is around, how do you measure? How do you bring in more sanity to the process? How do you bring in more real time, objectively measurable, outcome to the entire performance management? Now, what I'll be, telling, the audience is, think about any process that you bring in is to bring in more objectively. That doesn't, take away the fact about the fact you still have to think about how you passing the message to the individual. If you still go back and say, oh, this one number you had not achieved, and, basis that this is not working out, it's not going to help. How can you make that conversation a lot more positive for the individual, to say, hey, we spoke about 10 metrics, and on these 10 metrics, these are the numbers that you have performed basis the OKR template or whatever you say. Now, this is, these are the numbers that what's happened. Now, if you think about it, what would you do differently next year to enable those numbers to rise up? Ask those questions to the individual rather than giving your own opinion as a manager. And then ask a follow-up question. Okay, now these are the 10 things that you would want to do differently. How can I support you in this journey? I think, a mindset has to be more coaching than just thinking about, oh, I'm the boss, I'll tell you what you need to do differently. I think that's the mindset that has to go away from the organization, from becoming a people manager to rather coaches. Think about how can you be that mentor of that individual. Don't hook on to an individual, oh, this is my team member. And, if this person is not working out in the team, I should not let them go to another team as well. Think about individual for the organization. If you personally feel that this person has an aspiration to do something much larger, be open, go and talk to your peers and say, hey, this person is great and this person has a very different ambition. While he's in my team, I would think about this person will be a great fit in your team as well, and help that individual really reach their ambition. Don't think about, oh, this person has a different ambition, won't work out in my team, let them go. I think that's a biggest pitfall as a manager that we do. Think about moving away from a people manager role and become a coach. Guide them, help them, let them answer a lot of solution for themselves. Let them ask for support. Give them ideas about would you want to become from a technologist to rather, thinking about a management role. Would you want to think about being an engineer? Do you want to think about XYZ role? Because in your career and looking at your strengths, have you thought about it? Why don't we have a follow-up conversation of what you're thinking about your career? Let them start, shifting back from what they're doing, but thinking about as their goal and the ambition in the organization. I think whenever you start putting the individual in the center and then everything is in around that, you will automatically start to see a shift on how people have those conversations during performance, and you would automatically see a lot more outcome based conversation than what you today call as okay, just a performance management conversation.
Thank you, Megha. Thank you. And you brought out a very important point about the communication. The more open and transparent communication we have, the more discussion we have with the peers, with your teams, that is where it also builds the productivity, also the engagement. And over the complete discussion or the conversation we had, I've been having with you, one thing which has again and again stood out is about the feedback, making feedback. So that's what I would like to ask my last question with you. What are your insights about make feedback a continuous process?
I think I always say to all the managers and the individual as well, right? you know and let me say that when we do performance management, a lot of time individual thinks about performance management, or these conversations are manager led conversation. I would rather like all the individuals to start thinking, whose performance are they assessing? It's yours, right? Who's getting an appraisal is you. Who's expecting an increment is you, which is an outcome actually of a performance management conversation. And hence, these performance conversation should be driven by the individual, which means it's the ownership lies on you as an individual to go back to your clients, to go back to your peers, to go back to your support, supervisor, and say, hey, it's been a week or it's been a 10 days. Let's have our conversation to see how am I doing. Let's have a conversation to see where am I in my goal that I set for myself for next 1 year. Where do I want to go? And I think there is a shift that we all have to start getting into. Say, I really want to know, so that if there's something that path is going wrong, I can immediately fix it. Now imagine what you do with that. You have the control of your destiny. You are not waiting for somebody else to control your destiny. So that's number one. That's the positive. The second positive, you get a real time feedback. You don't have to, your boss can't go away and say, oh, I don't have time for this conversation, because you're setting in advance for them. Third, you've been seen into a light. Hey, this person is damn serious about the job. This person is damn serious about their self and their career. And that's the aura that you create for your own self as an individual and the personality, which means the managers say, oh, I can't mess with this individual because this person is really serious. Fourth thing, if you need support, whether it's coaching, whether it's training, whether it's having a mentor, you don't have to wait 6 months when the actual performance appraisal cycle is happening in so-called the HR or the process standpoint. You're getting real-time feedback. If you need a mentor, if you need a coach, if you need a training, you get that real-time as well. So those are, quick 4 benefits for you when you sit on the driver's seat. If you let your manager sit on the driver's seat, then he has the destiny to go right or to go left, which means, oh, I have the time to have this conversation. I don't have the time for this conversation. This is what I tell you from a performance standpoint. So it's just choice is yours as an individual. Which one do you want to do? Do you want to be in the driver's seat and control whether you want to go left or right, or really want to just work and still don't know where you are? So I think my piece of advice is being that controller seat, drive those performance and drive it as frequent as every week to 10 days to know how you're doing, to know where you want to go, and 3, what support you want. Have those 3 pieces every time ready for your conversation. Ask that question. How have been? What's your feedback? This is what I feel I've done right. This is what I feel I could have done better. okay, where do you think, I could do better? Where do you think, you can leverage me more and my potential? Third question that you can ask me, okay, in this journey, this is the three things that I feel that, I need support on, which is a training program, which is a mentor. Can you assign me a mentor? Have a mentor in the journey. You have no idea, every big person that you talk today will always have a mentor, because they help you gain perspective, that helps you start thinking bigger, helps you clarify your question. Ask for a mentor from your people manager, which may not be a people manager, by the way. So have those three things ready into every conversation, and have it as frequently as 15 days is what my advice is.
That's really wonderful, Megha, and thank you for insisting about the regular and conversations. The main, for that the main conversation about the frequent conversation about daily or weekly or monthly, as long as the open and transparent communication. So that brings to end of my questions, and let's see what our audience has. A few questions. So we have how there's one question which says like how can we measure the performance of the employees on contract to hire, that is with contract renewal, as there are more than two or three projects which they are in process, and merely judging on KPI is not solving things is in this new norms?
So great question. I think first of all, when somebody's on a contract, right, it's a fixed time contract, which means the contract will only get renewed, if a organization has the job to be continued, and second is of course the performance, which is the individual is good. Now, why would you think differently to judge their performance than what your full time is? Because they're only in the contract because of either you have a cost challenge, or they're on a contract because the job is of a fixed tenure. Now, even if they're good and there's no more job, you'll obviously not renew the contract. And if the person is good and you're questioning about renewing the contract, it's as similar to the performance management that you're doing for your own associate. There is no different apart from they being on a contract. I think that is how you have to start to treat your contractual employees, which means they will have a regular feedback, whether they're working on 3 projects, they're working on 4 projects, or they're working on 1 project, which means their manager needs to have a feedback. And if there is a case where one of the project they've done great, second project they've not done great, and that's the dilemma that you have, then you to think about the fourth project that they are, but then how the nature of the job is similar, provide that feedback and see for 2 months. If it improves, great. Otherwise, you always have an opportunity to discontinue a contract. I feel there has to be no differentiation between how you treat your internal people and your contractual people, and how you assess their performance vis-a-vis a contractual, performance assessment is what I would say.
Great, Megha, thank you. So we'll move on to the next question. So if you have to choose one parameter to say that the performance management system is mature, what that will be?
I think the only one parameter, if I have to see, is I would say results to the business. I think that would be my ultimate parameter, because it doesn't matter as an HR if I run a performance management. That's operations in my mind. It doesn't matter if as an HR I, uh, maybe do, engagement activities. What matters is what my actual attrition is. It's the number that impacts the business. What matters is the fact what's my engagement score, because that's a direct measurement to say how my organization is doing. So I think those are the greater parameters that, everybody has to look at, which is the impact to the business results. I think if that's the one parameter that I would say.
Great, Megha. Thank you so much for sharing your insights. And to conclude, with say performance management and feedback systems have become both a core part of our corporate and personal lives. So the more we adhere to it, the better our lives becomes when viewed from even from a goal achieving vantage point. And in the end, what has been focused in our conversation with Megha has always focused on is open and transparent communication is the key for the robust and impactful performance management system, no matter what your physical location is. So once again, I would like to thank you, Megha, for sharing your insights. And I'm sure our audience has gained immense value from today's conversation. Thank you again, our media partners, Benefico, which is an online guide for people managers, HR business partners, and executives. Aapki Khabar, a leading news portal from India and Voice of Common People. Thank you, our audience, for asking questions, and also our HR Success Talk team behind the show, Ranjit, Sabida, Arvind, Govind, Deepthi, and many other volunteers who are making this show successful. Thank you all.